Hi and welcome to this modern lesson tutorial, which is here to discuss activities that work with a BYOD classroom. I wanted to introduce this topic by having a look at one of the few really solid, useful bits of theory that's come out about education technology, and this is the SAMA model. If you haven't heard of this and you want some more information, then you can Google it, and there's lots of information. There'll also be a more detailed course on modern lessons which discusses this and some of the other theories about education technology. But in a nutshell, SAMA is, as you see on the screen, talking about how technology is used. At the bottom end of the scale, it's used as a substitution. So it's used in a way that doesn't really change what was done before. It's just replicated but using technology. One step up from that is that it's the same thing but it's augmented. It's slightly better or slightly easier than it was, but fundamentally we're doing the same thing that we could have done if we didn't have the technology. So this is in the enhancement section. Okay, so we've enhanced things. We haven't necessarily done anything new or exciting. At the top end of the scale, if that's what you want to call it, we have modification and redefinition, and these ideas are labelled broadly as transformational. Okay, they're transforming learning because they are allowing new things to happen, things that couldn't have happened without technology. So in your classroom, you can have recorded your students giving a presentation without technology. That's a given. At the opposite end of the spectrum, using a word processor, well, they could have just used pen and paper. There's nothing new or exciting about that. So that's something to think about. But what concerns me is if you start reading around this topic, you might get the sense that substitution has very little value, and obviously the thing you're aiming for every single time is redefinition. What I want you to remember is substitution is not bad. It's not a bad thing. Okay, there's nothing wrong with word processing. We all like word processing. It's a very valuable, very positive thing. And augmentation, well, that would be something like a spell check in a word processor. Yeah. It's just augments the writing process. There isn't an equivalent of that other than a dictionary. So the spell check makes the process easier and better, and we all have benefited from the spell check saving us from embarrassing typos, I'm sure. So do remember that it is okay to aim for substitution sometimes. You're not constantly aiming for redefinition. That is not necessary. Equally, excuse the terrible diagram, no one's asking you to reinvent the wheel. Okay, your teaching style doesn't need to be reinvented simply because there are now devices in the room. Okay, so thinking about the activities that you could do in a BYOD classroom, you don't have to be worrying that everything you've ever done without technology now no longer counts. It's no longer valuable or valid. But what you do need to do is use your skills. Use the skills that you do have and work out how these can be translated into the world of technology. So let's take this example. Okay, there's always the danger with technology more than anything else to fall the victim of buzzwords and catchy names. But I think the flipped classroom is one of those rare things that is catching on and is genuine in its value. If you're not aware of the flipped classroom, I'll give you a little insight into that with this example. So I'm talking about using your skills and relating that to possible BYOD activities. So let's say that you are what you might call a bit of an old school teacher. You're the kind of teacher who can stand at the front of the class and capture their attention for 40 minutes, that they hang on every word that you say, and they really engage with you, and you don't use any props, you don't use technology, you don't use a whiteboard, you use nothing other than you. Oh, to be that teacher. I mean, that's a great skill in itself, and you need to utilise that. The flipped classroom is desperate for people like this. The flipped classroom utilises the idea that your lesson, a great lesson that you do, should be recorded, and instead of you delivering that lesson live in front of your class, you record it and you set as homework for them to watch that lesson. And then when they come in the next day, instead of you having to deliver that lesson, you can talk to them about what happens next. You can extend them or discuss the things that they found challenging or difficult. So instead of, delivering a great lesson, sending them away to do some homework, they get home, they think, oh, I didn't really understand that, or I wish I'd asked that question, or this, that, or the other. Well, you're taking away all of those problems by bringing the homework to the classroom, and the classroom into the realms of homework. And that is a simple way that BYOD can facilitate that, because the students can take their device home and watch the content that you have produced. Okay. It is important that you make use of the basics. So with BYOD we're talking audio and video content. Okay, these are really valuable tools, because mostly, by and large, they are not device specific things. Media is a huge part of young people's lives. They understand it, they deal in it all the time. So many of them are authors of content that is audio or video based. So to engage with them on that level is really valuable, and BYOD lends itself to that extremely well. They have a lot of time for content that is created by people that they know. Okay, so content creation is really valuable. Peer-to-peer content creation, really positive thing. Getting them to create content to share with their peers, you creating content to share with them, it makes the whole learning process personal. Okay, you're creating content just for these students that you know, and they find that valuable, and they find that to be a very positive experience, as will you. You can tailor your content to be something better than the textbook that you've been using, because the textbook you use doesn't teach the topic you know in the way that you would like it to. Other things that you can try, Edmodo. This is a very specific example. Edmodo is a little bit like Facebook for schools, I suppose. You can basically create groups, invite your students to be in a group, and they can post, and you can post onto a wall, you can post assignments and content, and so can they, but you are the moderator, so you can delete anything that you don't find to be useful. This is a really great way of connecting with your class, both in and out of the classroom, in a safe and positive environment. Okay, so if you haven't tried Edmodo, that's definitely something to have a look at. Make use of the obvious big names out there. Twitter and Evernote. These are two that you should definitely be trying out. Twitter's great because, again, you can tweet them interesting information, but you can also suggest people that they should follow, and that in itself can generate really interesting discussion. And Evernote's great as a way of curating the work that they do. They can share folders with you, which then you can access anywhere, anytime. You can keep on top of what they're doing, and equally if you're doing project work, they can share folders with each other, and that too can be a really useful, and obviously both of these work across any platform. Cross-platform apps in a BYOD environment is obviously essential. Okay, absolutely critical. Another thing you could try, web quests. Okay, there's a web quest attached to the page where you found this video, and a web quest is basically an information gathering exercise based around internet research. So you set, maybe you write a worksheet that's posted online, and they have to gather information. And the great thing about web quests is that you can set up rules around the web quest. So for example, you could say, okay, I need you to go and find answers to these things, but you can't use Wikipedia if you want to try and help them develop research skills, or you have to find two sources which agree with each other in order to answer a question. You have to reference both of those in order for the answer you give to be valid. So web quests, as I say, there's an example here that you could have a look at. Really valuable, useful thing that you can do in a BYOD classroom. Collaboration is another one of those buzzwords, but again, I think really important and valuable. There's a couple of ways that students can collaborate with their writing. The most sort of famous and popular is Google Docs or Google Drive, whatever it's called now. And this is a really great way for students to be writing content together and helping each other edit and curate work that they can be proud of and that they can genuinely create together, and you can sort of keep track of how that's working. So really, as a final thought on this topic, it's the activities that you do with your students need to be based around creating valuable content. Okay, it's about video, it's about audio, it's about the written word being utilised in a positive way. But beyond that, what you're really looking for is for your students to be able to really get down to the gritty details, to get critical, to be good at evaluating information, that they're no longer happy with throwing together a PowerPoint in 5 minutes. They're no longer happy with an essay that they didn't really bother proofreading, because the stakes are now higher. Their peers can edit their work, their peers are judging and commenting on the videos and presentations that they give, as are you. And that's what can be really positive in a BYOD environment, is that there's an emphasis on creating really good quality content, but there's also an emphasis on getting students to engage in understanding what actually makes good content, and being critical in a positive way about that work, and the work they are creating, the work you are creating, and that their peers are creating. Okay, so I hope that gives you a few ideas about how to approach activities in the BYOD classroom.